a crazy, crazy story that I heard this week. I could not believe it. Um, I know I sent it to you. We kind of had a chuckle about this, but if people don't know, and I will read the article, if people don't know, in East Hampton, Massachusetts, there was a principal or superintendent of a school system that was going to become a superintendent of another school system. They voted 4-3 to hire the guy. And the story goes he used the term ladies to write a letter to two of the school committee members, and that became problematic. So they didn't end up hiring him. So it's as I told you earlier, Jim. What we need is we need a segment where we go like mass stupidity, and the mass is for Massachusetts because I know we bust on a lot of people down south. Sorry, people down south. Because you hear the dumb stories, but we're not immune to that. And this goes to one of my points when we hear this story, and I say it all the time. It's on my material that I post on social media. Don't outsource your thinking. And I think this story, we'll get to the point where you'll see what I mean. There are some people that seriously outsource their thinking. So let me read this story for the people on Spotify. And it's from the Boston Globe. After the leading candidate for superintendent of East Hampton Public Schools claimed he lost his job for using the word ladies in an email, he said he was shocked because he grew up in a time when ladies and gentlemen was a sign of respect. What do you think? Ladies and gentlemen still a sign of respect, Jim?
Yeah, it's well, I just wanted to, it's funny because I've grown up around a lot of different people, and it's like there's a lot of people that grew up in the 60s and 70s where people weren't as sensitive over what words that you used and what words that you didn't. And I've heard some things where I'm like, okay, if they use that in a public setting or they use that in a job interview, they kind of deserve to get some backlash for that. So I'm pretty conscious of what words are deemed offensive and which ones are not. But like the whole ladies thing is just kind of caught me by surprise myself, because I'm like, this is something I don't know of anyone that I've ever met that has thought of that word as offensive. And it's like you go to every single any restaurant that you go to still has ladies and gentlemen on the bathroom. So
don't
there going to be this movement now to remove all ladies and gentlemen on the
don't spoil the story, because we're heading towards that. So check it out. So the story continues, and this is from the Boston Globe. You guys can read it if you want. But in today's modern workplace, is ladies respectful or a microaggression? I hate that word. I want macro aggressions. If we're going to aggress, let's do it right. Right? Unless you're singing along to Beyonce, experts say it's probably best to steer clear of the term. Now, this is funny, because when I read this, I was like, pretty soon they're going to come for Beyonce's song too, right? Instead of saying, oh, the single ladies, they're going to be like, all the single people, right? Because you're not going to be able to sit there and say ladies anymore if we allow this to go, right? So the story continues. While not everyone will be offended, several diversity and inclusion experts told the Globe the word has a long and complicated history and can hold negative connotations when used in inappropriate settings, such as contract negotiations in Perron's case. Instead, it's best to ask people how they want to be addressed to avoid alienating or upsetting anyone. Right? So here's where we get into my saying that we really need to start getting out and telling people to stop outsourcing your thinking, because this is what the Globe did. There's a story, a guy running for, a person applying to be a superintendent in a town, writes ladies, it's dumb, it's stupid, and they said, well, it was problematic, so we're going to fire you. So instead of the Globe being honest, they have to go find someone willing to fit with their agenda to sit here and tell us that it's a microaggression or it's problematic. So I'll continue reading the story. So Elisa Van Dam, Vice President of Allyship and Inclusion at the Institute for Inclusive Leadership at Simmons University, said the word ladies can be infantilizing in a professional setting. Perron had used the term to address two women. Can we say women? In leadership positions. Well, Okay, I still don't see the issue. School committee chair Cynthia, I can't even say, Kwasinski, and the committee's executive assistant Susan Colby. Right? The idea of lady does not correlate or does not lead you to a woman who is in charge and in power and has her work really under control. I can you tell me a better word than ladies for someone that has it in control? I mean, I'm sitting here when I was reading the story and I'm like, well, what words can we use? I don't
Well,
know. What do you say?
that's the thing too, is it's like well, the reason why it's funny too is not that like people felt offended or anything like that. It's we're starting to run into a circular reference error where it's like there's no word that you can use. And like I think of like there's words 20 years ago that were deemed offensive, so a different word was used in its place. Now
Yep.
today those different words are viewed as offensive, so now we have to come up with new words. And I'm like, how long is it before we go full circle and we use the original words that were deemed offensive? Because it's all just like this big circular reference error where it's like you can't use something, so you have to move on to something else, and it never ends.
Listen, this story gets even worse. I don't know how miserable this person's life is if this is how you go through life, but this is the next line. I kid you not. People read it, find it. We'll link to it in the description below. Comment if you want. Right? It says it's none of the things you want to be thought of as a woman in business or any kind of hiring situation. I don't want to be considered. Well, I'm not a lady, but I don't want to be considered a lady. If I was a woman, I think I'd want to be considered a lady. These people
Well,
have
it's like if
lost the
do you
plot.
want to be considered a gentleman? I mean, what else? It's like is that a bad thing to be called a
It's
gentleman?
it's gentle person.
Yeah.
She said a candidate addressing women as ladies at any stage of the hiring process can raise questions about the candidate's judgment. It's tone deaf. It seems that he hasn't been paying attention to the way language use has been evolving and how we're talking about diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging. Oh, that's a new one. Belonging. He's operating on a very old paradigm. It's like my head's hurting right now reading this, right? So it goes on a little bit more, but let me get you to another good part, right? So what they did, and as I said, we're trying to let people understand that you have a lot of people out there that think they're smart. We have a lot of smart people out there, and what they do is instead of thinking, they allow experts to tell them how to think. The experts say this, so it must be right because they're the experts on it. So I think what happened is the Globe knows most people are gonna be like, ladies, how is that problematic? This is the stupidest thing. So instead of agreeing, instead of saying, hey, this went too far, like, what are we doing? No, they double down. And what they do is they find a couple people whose job is to keep this grift going because you're a diversity, equity, and inclusion professor, or you own a company that's for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the only way these people keep jobs is by finding new microaggressions. You're never going to solve anything with these people because if you solved it, their job goes away. So what they keep doing is they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And if you want to find an aggression and if you want to find anything to be offended about, pay them and they'll find it for you. It blows my mind.
Yeah, and it really makes me question how the Boston Globe sources their stories too. Like I'm still a little bit confused how this went from an email conversation to the a main piece in the Boston Globe. So like he sends them an email and then they send an email back saying, "Oh, we're not hiring because you use the term ladies." Like,
yeah,
it's
well,
like if,
what happened? It was another story. This made it into national headlines because I guess when this made it onto social media, there was like 750 comments. Most people agreed with the guy, like that's silly. I guess 150 people showed up to protest them doing that at the school. So, that garnered some attention. I even think it got into the Daily Mail. That's where I first kind of heard this story, and I didn't pay much mind until, like I said, the Boston Globe ran with it, and they had just this. It's I don't know. It's funny because, like I said, and it shouldn't be funny, right? We shouldn't laugh at this because these people don't care. They don't care that you're laughing because they're changing words, they're changing meaning while we sit here and laugh. So we kind of have to say enough with that. Enough being dumb. Ladies doesn't mean it. So let me go on a little bit more. So while some people may appreciate being addressed as ladies, it can be an informal and appropriate word to use when negotiating contract stipulations and in the workplace, said Jen Mannion. Here we go. A professor of history and sexuality, women's and gender studies at Amherst College. And if someone referred to them in such a way at work, Mannion said, they would flip. How dare you? This is a professor. This is what I mean. We send kids to school and we're like, listen, go learn. So we don't teach our kids to actually think. Well, I try teaching my kids to think, but most people just like go to school and learn. And you know what they learn to do? Regurgitate. The person sitting in front of me, they're the professor, they're a teacher, they're the subject matter expert. They know better than I do. I defer to them. We outsource our thinking. And here's where it gets really good. And I'm going to tie this up in a couple more minutes with how stupid this is. And hopefully everyone sees how stupid this is. But wait until you see what this lady says. This professor says, I'm sorry, I called her a later. She would flip if she was here. I just can't.
That's it. You're fired.
That's it. Justin, you're problematic. Well, it's not the first time I've been called problematic. All right. So Mannion said, this word has historic baggage, and it was often associated with women-only spaces such as passenger cars and public bathrooms. I don't get the passenger cars, but we're back to your public bathrooms. We're going to have to come up with a name. I think this lady's going to give us some, right? That were created for keeping women separate and keeping women of color out of those spaces.
Wait, when did women of color become involved?
Listen,
Why?
You throw the kitchen sink. Don't you understand that? And all these things, you throw the kitchen sink. Right?
Like, how did this become about race? Like, when is race involved in any of this conversation? Then all of a sudden, people are injecting it. Whereas,
here, like I said, you have to pay these people, and what they do is they fall on whatever straw man, whatever thing they can fall on that's worked before to keep it going. So here we go. The term represented a group of women who fit a certain race or class, Mannion said, and it also evokes a time when women weren't allowed to work and were expected to be soft-spoken and demure. Because of that context, Mannion said, ladies can come off as patronizing and demeaning. So here's where it gets real fun. And it's not real fun because if we don't stand up to this, if we don't start having people being critical thinkers and pushing back against this madness where experts tell us everything we have to do, everything's going to change. Everything's going to be stupid. So Mannion said better ways to address a group of people could include y'all, everyone, folks, friends, and people. I will tell you what, I've been a professional for a lot of years. If I started an email, y'all, I think they would think I lost my mind, right? I would love to see this guy have put his email to those two ladies as, y'all, I was thinking. I don't get it.
Yeah. Hey, people.
Hey, people, right? Oh, yes, it's people's night. Oh, what a night. Right? Are we going to have to change all songs?
I think so.
We can dude looks like a y'all. Yeah, yeah, dude looks like a y'all. I mean,
dun it.
Right? She's a friend. She's a friend. I don't know that song. Whoa, whoa, whoa. She's a friend.
What was the one at the beginning? All the single friends.
All the single friends. All the single friends. Yeah. But again, we laugh, and this is our problem, right? We laugh at this. They don't care. They keep going, right? Now, again, one of the things that I want to bring us to, right, is when I say that we outsource our thinking, what a lot of people are going to do is they're going to hear this story, they're going to read this story, they're going to read what these two experts say, and they're going to say, you know what? It probably is problematic. I did not know that that's what ladies meant. But you know, you just got to do a little research. And this is something we don't do. We don't do the research. We don't look into things. So I went to Merriam Webster's because I figured, hey, Merriam Webster's, some people have issues with Merriam Webster's and how lately they've been a little bit politicized. So I said, let me check them and see what they say the definition of lady is. Huh. Right off the bat, a woman having property rights or authority, especially as a feudal superior. Sounds like a minimized lady.
Yes, how derogatory.
A woman receiving the homage or devotion of a knight or lover. I can't
Sounds like
believe
a hoodlum to me.
How dare you? We're gonna have that Greta Thunberg thing.
Yeah.
How dare you? Right? Oh, check this out. A woman of superior social position. You know what? Now I get it. Obviously, those school committee members don't have superior social position, so maybe ladies was too high. Maybe that's what we're thinking about it wrong. Maybe it was ladies was too high instead of being too low. Maybe it was too high of a compliment, too high of a word to use. But again, you go down these definitions, right? Often used in a courteous reference. Any of various titled women in Great Britain, titled women. All these things say you had to be some like women of importance. But if you outsource your thinking to the professor who wants you to believe that everything is a microaggression, they're going to sit there and lie to you or spin it in a way that you, or maybe not you, but other people will sit there and start buying this baloney. And that is what I mean when I say we have to stop outsourcing our thinking. I want to get that into a lot of people's heads. People out there, please use it. Please use it. Tell people you're outsourcing your thinking. When a politician's telling you something you know it's wrong and it's provable wrong, don't believe them. Don't go along with them. Don't be like, well, they know. That's the problem. I'm going to tell you right now, most people don't know. Most people talk out their behinds. I also want to show one other thing, because this is also what I found funny in Merriam-Webster. I'm going to have to move the screen. Give me a second. Is for usages, recent examples on the web. So what they did is said, hey, listen, recently on the web, we've used lady in this context. So President Joe Biden and First Lady Joe Biden. Well, that's problematic.
Very problematic.
Joe Biden. Right? Here's another example from Merriam-Webster's. President Biden speaks in Rolling Fork, Mississippi as First Lady Jill Biden. Well, that's problematic. First y'all, Jill Biden. Is that what we got to do? So my point with this is they sit there and will tell you this is problematic. You're not supposed to do that. But then they use it all the time. So again, we have to call out stupidity when it's stupidity, right? We have to say this is mass stupidity, because this probably only happens in Massachusetts because we have this educated elite class, right? We think we're smarter than a lot of other people. And because we think that, we defer to them. Well, I don't defer to them, but a lot of people defer to them because we think we know better. We think we are better. What do you say, Jim?
Yeah, and it only evolves from here too. It's like we laugh at it now, and then in like 5-10 years from now, it becomes at a point where nobody can use the word lady in society anywhere. That's the way it goes. And you know, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like how pronouns have gone in a lot of circumstances too, where like even if I just go to Dunkin' Donuts to get my coffee, I see the guy at the window with his he him pronouns on it, and I'm like, I can see you're a guy. Like I don't I don't need to see your pronouns to know you're a guy. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's gotten a little bit too far, and it starts with one thing like this, and then it just evolves over time to the point where like society is just completely changed into a different direction than what it was. But like you said, it's like it's completely just in a way that doesn't make sense at all.
No. Listen, I understand over time, like things change, we have to have that discussion as a society. What it can't be is it can't be people that want to make change for the sake of change, pissed off people that want to look at everything as a microaggression, trying to change everything just to smooth out the edges of life, because life is always going to have sharp edges. And my biggest thing is, I look at these people on the school committee, I hope that town votes them out. Because if you don't have the capacity to deal with ladies or words, what else don't you have the capacity to deal with? Like, I don't trust you. If you can't take a word or something and maybe even like, this should be a learning situation. Should it be a learning situation? How about those women, instead of the like, we're gonna fire you or we're not gonna take you now, and say, hey, listen, we really didn't appreciate that. Could you call us y'all? He might have been like, that's dumb, but whatever, you know. But where's the discussion? That's another piece of this. There's like no discussion. And again, so here's the thing. I think some of the story too is they probably didn't want this guy. They came up with any excuse they could just to say, hey, listen, we don't want you. That's happened to me. I went for jobs and positions, and I went to become an officer in the military, and you have to do this big interview. There's a board, there's a bunch of people. So I went in, I killed it. And I still have the paperwork because it's funny. They didn't pick me to be an officer because I said the word ain't. Ain't. I'm like, what? Oh yeah, you said the word ain't. You can't be an officer.
Ain't.
Ain't. AAINTE. Ain't. So what that meant to me was they had someone picked. They had nothing else to say. So pick something. Right? And to me, this is this story. But the bigger part of the story is the amount of effort that the Boston Globe took to make this an actual thing, to actually give this legs, to actually give this meaning. That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's the good point, is because in this situation you have a person, a candidate who's seemingly all else qualified to do this role, and instead of picking apart and saying, hey, you know, this part of your resume didn't qualify you for the job, it was this completely separate reason that's like nonsensical.
Sure.
And when we look at this stuff too, it's like, you know, obviously, like you said about times of changing, we want to be sensitive to people's feelings and whatnot. But Len, what a lot of people don't realize too is, like, the way that we look at it is there's another agenda that's being driven here. And like, there was a political analyst that was talking about this in the 70s. We got to bring up the clip at some point in the future where they talk about, you know, it takes about 20 years to change the culture of society, because they start when you're a kid. They start with kids, and then they completely change the way that society is constructed to have them believe a completely different that society operates a completely different way. It's like ideological subversion is the technique that they use. But yeah, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. It's like when you have groups take down statues and erase history, it's like there's a deeper agenda that's being driven here. It's not just about, okay, this is an insensitive term, but you know, it's like
that's definitely a future discussion that we'll probably get into and have. Hopefully it won't be because there's more statues being knocked over, but who knows?
And someone had a good phrase for it. It's like, when the people who want to destroy society are louder than the people who want to defend society, that's what's going on right now, and that's why we're moving in this direction. And until the people that want to defend society are louder than the people trying to destroy it, we're going to keep moving in this direction.
Well, I'll tell you, this is where I agree with you and I disagree with you a little bit, because I agree with you. One of the things is they're not always louder is they held the institutions, right? They held the mainstream media. They didn't let people do this. That's why I think podcasts and video shows like this are really good, because we're allowed and we're getting the different takes. We're actually getting some common sense thought out there. So share this with people. or at least share the ideas with people. And if they're like, hey, where'd you come up with that? Be like, oh, the Justin Thurber show. Jimmy Davidson said this. Justin Thurber said this. You got to watch it. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people see what's going on and also help them see it in a different light. And it's not because we're some great minds, right? I think what we're trying to do is not talk to the same things that they want us to talk about. If we keep saying the same things over and over and nothing gets taken care of, they love it. But by having our discussions, having these different ways of looking at things, having an article that sits there and most people would be, well, all it is this, it's stupid. Well, it's not stupid. And B, it's indicative of a bigger problem that we face as a society that we need to be cognizant of and stop doing. And that's listening to expert classes to actually, when we get information, process that information, say, does that make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, go against it. Say, no, that makes no sense. And tell people that doesn't make sense. We can't be quiet anymore. And hopefully shows like this and other shows that are coming out from different people around the United States that I'm sure other people have watched on here will start pushing back. And I hope our younger generation, as you said, I hope what they start understanding is, and I hope their parents teach them that you have to see the world, you have to look at the world, you have to see what it's telling you, and then you have to put it through like a filter, some sort of filter in your brain and say, does that make sense? Yes or no? And if it doesn't make sense, be able to take it and come up with your own understanding, your own conclusion. I tell you what, 9 times out of 10 is going to be different than what these people are telling you. So, all right. I think we beat those folks with a long enough. Right?
Yeah, my last note on that would just be, one way to kind of change the direction is just get involved yourself. A lot of this stuff is being played out on the local levels. And I mean, like in my town recently, there was a big to-do about Columbus Day versus the Indigenous Peoples Day, given that we're on, talking about holidays here.
Yep.
And it's like, you just feel the agenda. You can see right through the agenda of why they try to erase some of these traditions and holidays that have been celebrated in the past, and like all that. A lot of these battles are happening on the local level. So I can't speak enough about just anyone just getting involved in your local elections, and even if you're not familiar with something, it's like learn a little bit about the position and get involved, because that's really how the course gets changed.
So one last thing I guess I would say is, if you're a lady of the night, if you're a lady, please comment below and tell us if you like being called lady, or if you want to be called y'all or folks or friends or people. Comment below. If you have heard other things and you like to be called something else, comment below on that. I just think we really need to do better, for our kids.